Yes, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jack Farmer. His name is Raj Giri, and this is the Wrestling Inc. Thursday show where we chat all about the news and notes in pro wrestling today. And if we got a doozy for you, we got all sorts of stuff about CM Punk, Warner Brothers, trips to India, and so much more. But before we get into all the details, Raj, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling great. We already got some folks in the chat: Keith George and J.R. Smith, Ricky Zaldivar, Tornado, Anthony Y. Thank you guys so much for coming through. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. But as everyone settles in, Raj, I want to talk about some stuff that we were chatting about before earlier this morning. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it, but I'm buzzing about it. I'm excited about it.
So don't say a word.
We're gonna break a little bit of news here right off the top. Wrestling Inc. will be represented at Double or Nothing. I'm heading to Vegas, baby, and I'm going to be at the media scrum and be up chatting with folks there. I'm super excited about it, Raj.
Yeah, I've been wanting you to do it forever, so I'm excited that you're going out, man. It should be a great one.
Yeah, these media scrums, they have a way of being newsworthy, as you know, right? Things tend to happen at these things.
Right. Not so much the last one, but the one before was one to be at for sure.
Yeah. And Ricky Zaldivar talking about the new background. Yeah, I'm actually having some construction done at my place. So for this week, I've been bouncing around different rooms where I feel like I'm going to get the least amount of noise when I'm doing it. So bouncing around a little bit here. We'll see how it all plays out. But I cannot wait to go to Double or Nothing. It's going to be a fun show, and it's going to be fun to get to chat with some different wrestlers in the chat. Let me know if there's anyone you'd like to see if I could try to sneak an interview from. I'm very good about roaming around and just butting in on people's business and saying, "Hey, how you doing, pal?" and then try to ask some questions. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah, a lot of folks here in the chat here. Kristen Jonas coming through. We also got Baby Ice. Good to see you, and Adam McFarland. Hey, we got Ricky saying nice dog back there, Raj.
Yeah, she's chilling.
Coming in trying to help report some news.
All right, she's like, you guys are talking about CM Punk. I gotta hear what's going on.
Yeah, even
Punk equals ratings.
Right. Even What about what's CM Punk's dog's name? Maybe your dog's interested in the dog. The dog aspect.
There's multiple choice, I'd get it.
Yeah. I know if I heard it again, I'd remember. But
Lucky?
No, that's something. Yeah, if I heard it again, I would know. But
Larry.
Larry, that's it. Yeah. So your dog's like, what? Any news about Larry? Yeah, I'm here for the Larry news. How's Larry doing? Yeah, everyone in the chat here to our support here to let us know the name was Larry. So so good stuff there, Matt. Lots of folks I haven't seen before. William, good to see you. Cleveland Rocks, good to see you. Bit Milligan, I've seen you before, but still good to see you. Big Time Baxter as well. We got some bad news though. We got to talk about, Raj. Some big news, some heavy news. Unfortunately, news broke that superstar Billy Graham has passed away, and I'm gonna be honest, he's a bit before my time. I didn't watch a lot of his stuff personally, but I do know that I don't think it's hyperbole to say he's one of the most influential wrestlers of all time. When you look at how many wrestlers have sort of copied his style over the years.
Yeah, Hulk Hogan, Jesse the Body Ventura, they immediately come to mind. They admittedly, they took a lot of their character from superstar Billy Graham. I'm kind of like you. I don't think Billy Graham was pretty much retired when I started watching wrestling. I started watching in 88, 87, 88. And like Billy Graham was a commentator at the first SummerSlam. He was the manager of Don the Rock Morocco. And it was clear he had kind of been through a lot up until then, from his prime. And when he was the Don Morocco's manager, this was before I started really following wrestling and researching it. I was like, who's this older guy? Because I thought he was like 60, but at the time he was like only 45. And, to his credit, he's kind of looked the same since then,
Yeah.
ever since. And then I just read up on him and just seeing like, yeah, I mean, you watch his old interviews and his old promos, and the guy was electric. He was just on fire. I cannot believe they went from him to Bob Backlund. You talk
Yes.
about like, two polar opposites. Vince McMahon has said that superstar Billy Graham, if he had been how he was in his prime, in the mid 80s, he would have gone with someone like that to be his Hulk Hogan, like to be his center star. So just a gigantic superstar, no pun intended, but
Yeah.
a legend, often imitated, never duplicated. And yeah, as always, our condolences to his friends and family. He had been battling health issues for a while and kept beating it and kept beating it. That anytime you heard about something, you're like, he's going to beat it again this time. But you can't beat Father Time. But he had such a legendary career.
Yeah, Bit Milligan in the chat here saying, I didn't start watching wrestling until 90, so I didn't know a lot about superstar Billy Graham. Yeah, I didn't, like, I knew of him and I'd seen bits of him and obviously, but like as a manager and stuff, but I didn't, Raj, like you, I wasn't really thinking much about who he was. And it wasn't until, I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, Scott Steiner really started becoming, the Scott Steiner we know and love today. And he referenced superstar Billy Graham. And I was like, oh, wow, I do see similarities. And then that was when it kind of opened up my eyes like, oh, wow, yeah, there's a lot of people that basically just rip him off and do the superstar Billy Graham thing.
Yeah, and as far as like a charismatic, jacked up guy that could really talk, he was, I mean, one of the first. When you think about it, like on that main event stage in WWF, I'm trying to think of who else. I mean, you had a lot of charismatic guys like Flair and Dusty, and obviously a lot of guys before that, Gorgeous George. But as far as that 80s prototype, like that Hulk Hogan, Scott Steiner, like you mentioned, when he became Big Papa Pump, Billy Graham was really a trendsetter.
And it is funny now that you mentioned that they went from him to Bob Backlund. I wish I was in the room and they were like, you know what? We need someone that people like. Let's like, it just seems so backwards today. You'd never think that they'd be like, yeah, this guy's so electric and fun. We need a good hero to beat him. And let's get the opposite of that.
I think that's when Vince Jr. was like, all right, I got to take this company over from my dad. No offense to Bob Backlund. Obviously, he's had an amazing career. But...
Yeah. He obviously did okay by right. WWE. But it's just, in hindsight, looking back, it feels so weird. But I got someone mentioned about talking about the way I was dressed. Oh yeah, Big Time Baxter said I look like I'm coming from a job interview. Close. I'm gonna go do commentary for Santino Bros tonight right after this. So I'm already getting ready because I got to go beat LA traffic. So that's always gonna be.
Feel like 3 hours early.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. You never beat LA traffic, but I'm gonna try. Gonna give it the old college try.
Yeah.
So yeah, let us know in the chat for anyone who watched Billy Graham, superstar Billy Graham, and let us know if you have any memories of him throughout the show. We'll try to read them out, or any thoughts on him. But yeah, just Jesse Ventura, Hulk Hogan, Scott Steiner, 3 of my favorites right off the bat that are basically superstar Billy Graham. But Tornado Anthony Wyatt tells me to be careful because Backlund will put me in the chicken wing. Oh, I would not fight. I would not fight him. I'd run away. That's the first rule of thumb there. And then a long story short says, I remember his comeback and wondering who the hell he was. It is funny when you watch wrestling as a kid, you're very disrespectful to the previous generation. And then as you get older, and new generations come in, you start to realize, oh no, the old generations were cool too. But
and I think especially now, because especially back then, because TV wasn't nationwide and so prevalent. Because now, when Steve Austin comes back, he's still getting giant reactions, and it's been the same amount of way longer than Billy Graham's prime from when I started watching. So it's just kind of interesting how, with the advent of TV and the Monday Night Wars, and how kind of the legends from like the late 80s to 90s have kind of stayed that way in a lot of ways.
Yeah. it's
I
very
mean,
weird.
It's kind of stayed pop culture.
Yeah, it's very weird when you start doing it's been this long since Stone Cold has been around, and it's longer than it was, because you start doing that kind of stuff and you realize that time flies, Raj. Like I was thinking about that 70s show and how that 70s show is longer ago now than the 70s were when that 70s show was on TV.
Right. Yeah.
So that's that always hurts me a little bit there when I think about that. Let's talk a little bit about ratings, if you don't mind. Let's dive into this. I saw Twitter user Raj Giri, the Raj Giri, dropped some ratings information this week. AEW Dynamite saw a drop in ratings. The show averaged 814,000 viewers, down 7% from last week, and a 0.28 in the key demo, down 13%, while NXT was down considerably from last week. It averaged 564,000 viewers, which was down 6%, and a 0.14 rating in the demo, down 18%. So down across the board for our midweek shows here. Any analysis for us on that, Raj?
Well, NXT, they were up against the Lakers Nuggets game, and that game was a monster. That did, and Dynamite was against a big game too. But the Lakers game, the Lakers and the Warriors, they just had this insane series when it comes to ratings. I think the best ratings for the second round, whatever it is in the NBA of the playoffs, it's in like 10, 15 years. It was something crazy like that. And that game did over 7 million viewers. But NXT, 564,000 viewers, 0.14 down from last week. You know, all these shows that are up against the NBA are going to be down. Kind of same thing with Dynamite. Dynamite last night, they were hyping, the biggest announcement in company history. Usually the announcements do help the ratings some. But they did 814,000 viewers, which was down 7% from last week, and a 0.28, which was down 13%. It was the second lowest audience that they've done this year, but that's to be expected. May is basically the toughest full month of competition that AEW faces with the NHL and NBA. And then, they have a little bit at the beginning of June as well. But as far as a full month goes, May is usually their toughest. With Raw, it's obviously like December as far as a full month with the NFL. So they were down 12% year over year in total viewers and down 15% in 18 to 49. Last week was one of the rare weeks where they were actually up a little bit year over year, 4% in total viewers and only down 3%. But they had a huge show last week. This Vanderpump, whoever that is, did huge ratings last night. I guess it was the last episode of the season, and then they're going to have a couple reunion shows after this. But so AEW got beat by the NBA programming, Vanderpump Rules, and then the Rich and Shameless, which I guess airs right after the NBA stuff. So, and that featured the Hulk Hogan Gawker case. So, Dynamite down, but kind of in the range of what they've been doing, and not as bad year over year as they've done other weeks.
Yeah. We got a quick comment here. Lee Jones commenting on our teeth. So thanks, Raj. We got some good teeth over here.
Good thing I brushed before the show.
Yeah. I think what I'm taking away from this is that we should start covering Vanderpump Rules instead of wrestling. I think that's where the money is.
Well, what is Vanderpump? What is that? Is it a person? Is it a city?
I have
no restaurant.
Idea. I think it's a person. We got Big Time Baxter saying, I didn't know what Vanderpump was, but checked YouTube clips and it's basically girls gossiping.
Like we're doing right now.
Why aren't we getting Vanderpump?
Yeah, I know. We need bigger numbers.
We've got a Superman kid says that wrestling ratings will never go up.
Raw and SmackDown are up year over year. I mean, they're not no shows that were around from the 90s are going to be doing what they did back then. And even the NFL, I don't think, is doing what they did back then. But NFL is close.
Yeah. We got a couple of chats here. Big Time Baxter coming through saying Raw, NXT, and Dynamite are all skewing younger, with all shows dropping with older viewers. Any truth to that? It feels like the demo is also going down.
No, that is true. And Raw the other week was up 70% in the demo for year over year.
Yeah.
So, or was it SmackDown? One of those shows. So yeah, no, that is true. And the overall viewers are up, but their 18 to 49 is definitely up more.
Now, with this being down, of course, there was a big announcement thing, and we'll get into the announcement. Is it a bit shocking because a lot of people assumed that the big announcement was going to have to do with CM Punk and all this other stuff, and everyone believes that CM Punk is going to be a draw. Is it a bit shocking that the idea of possibly a CM Punk announcement wasn't enough to get viewers to tune in?
Well, I mean,
or do you think one has nothing to do with the other?
Yeah, I don't think it had anything to do with it. So, according to reports, CM Punk was supposed to be part of that announcement. And it was interesting heading into Wednesday, or that was just yesterday. It feels like it was last week. Days can feel like many days right now. But yeah, Punk was supposed to be part of the announcement, got scrubbed the day before. And this Ace Steel situation apparently had a lot to do with it. Apparently they haven't come to terms on how he's going to be used, and Punk wasn't happy that Ace Steel couldn't be at the building. So they came to an impasse, and it was interesting coming into Wednesday. It just felt like all the momentum was on AEW side. We were just talking about this last week. They're doing huge number for Wembley. They were coming off a well-rated episode of Dynamite for what they've been doing. And now Punk coming back, second show. A lot of people thought they were going to announce a new TV deal. There had been reports a couple weeks ago that was going to be part of this announcement, which didn't happen. It was just all this stuff. And then CM Punk coming back. And then ultimately all that was announced was there's a new AEW show on Saturdays. Nothing about Punk. Obviously, that kind of fell apart. And, hopefully AEW can do something about that, or AEW and Punk, because he is so ingrained with this show that if you don't do it, all of a sudden it's like a Rampage, There's not many people that could carry a second show, and splitting it up with your top stars, just splitting it up and putting them on two different shows is not going to work. And I guess we could talk more about that. What did you think?
So just to make sure that we kind of cover our bases on the story, it was reported on Wrestling Inc., and you guys can read this in full on Wrestling Inc., is according to Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, Punk was set to be part of AEW Collision's announcement that was made at Warner Brothers Discovery's upfront. However, Warner Brothers Discovery was supposedly told to remove Punk from all their material, although they ended up forgetting to remove him from an unreleased press release, which ended up being leaked. Meltzer disclosed that a, quote, situation did occur, and that PW Insider's story regarding Ace Steel is pretty close. He added that Warner Brothers Discovery believes an attempt will be made to work issues out, and then Meltzer has allegedly been told many contradictory things about Steel. He said that AEW CEO Tony Khan does not want Steel around for shows, while Punk and Steel were under the impression that he was going to be at every Collision event, and that was the alleged blow-up. So there's a lot of pieces to this. This is a very a lot of things I think I want to take away from this. The first thing I want to talk about is the Steel apparently. There's reports that Steel was rehired and working remotely, but then he thought he was going to be brought on the road, but then that wasn't going to happen. That got vetoed. That blew things up. I don't know much about Ace Steel, and I don't obviously know. I just know what I'm being told via reports. It feels like there's a lot of stuff going back and forth regarding Ace. There's a lot of stuff in play for Ace Steel in what seems like a much bigger situation than Ace Steel, if these reports are true, if that makes sense. No disrespect to him, but it feels like there's a lot of big things happening because of him.
Well, obviously, Punk is very tight with him, and I think Punk probably sees him as the guy who had his back when everything went down with the Elite. Back in September at All Out. Um, so yeah, it's weird that this wasn't worked out beforehand. you know,
Right.
because they had, I guess, all the promotional materials printed with Punk on it. Where they had the posters, they replaced Punk with MJF on the posters at the last minute, and it just makes it the fact that Punk has this much control over AEW and keeps what should have been a high spot of the year for AEW ended up
Hmm.
becoming a big headache and controversy, and it just makes it seem like they don't have their stuff under control. I just think at some point it's like it just feels like this Punk AEW thing is not going to work. I'm not saying it's one side's fault or the other. It just seems like it's just not. Just a couple months ago, Punk was bashing all the top stars in AEW on Instagram. And here we are back again. So I don't know. It just seems like it's not meant to be.
I was going to ask you, this is something I wanted to ask you all day, actually, is in your time covering wrestling, have you seen a single wrestler kind of create this much drama in a company? Assuming, I should rephrase that, because again, I don't know, it could be either side or whatever, but have you seen a single wrestler cause a company to have to kind of like do this much stuff for said wrestler before? Because I'm trying to remember, and I know there have been difficult wrestlers in the past, but as far as like creating new shows and splitting rosters and the back and forth and all this other stuff, I don't know if I've seen it at this level before.
Yeah, I mean, the closest would be Shawn Michaels, but it's not like this. I mean, Shawn Michaels, he got in a fight with Bret Hart, but he was working angles with Bret Hart, a month and a half later. He obviously was a big headache backstage, was didn't want to do the job for Steve Austin. After the press conference, after that WrestleMania where he lost to Austin, he caused a little scene at the press conference. So Shawn would be the closest, but it's not like this to where, they're having to redo their whole planning for a TV show, and a TV show that could mean a huge deal for them as far as a new TV rights deal. Because if the show is a big hit and they got 2 hits, that's definitely going to give them a much bigger increase, you would think, than if the show starts bombing, or not bombing, but not doing well. Just a month in, because Saturday nights are tough nights. They're going to be up against WWE PLEs once a month. They got UFCs almost every week. They're going to have college football. You got the NBA right now. There's like basically like 2 months where you're not going to have that much with July and August as far as non-UFC, non-WWE. So it's a tough night. They are going to be in prime time, so that is an advantage over what Rampage has. But just taking the current roster, dividing it into 2, and no Miro coming back and Thunder Rosa coming back is not going to be enough. You're basically creating another Rampage if you don't have Punk, and if you're doing a brand split. There's 2 things. There's 2 ways they can go. If they do the brand split, well, they have the number of wrestlers to do that easily, but the number of top guys that make a difference, all of a sudden you're dividing that into 2. Then that's a tough deal, because when you look at the guys that really make a difference numbers wise, it's Omega, MJF, Bryan Danielson, Moxley.
Yeah.
And then it kind of, after that, it kind of, changes. You don't have the draws. You have stars, and there's stars in the show, but not people that could really carry a show. So if you don't do the brand split, then what always ends up ultimately happening is that one show becomes the B show. We saw it for years and years with Raw and SmackDown until SmackDown moved to Fox. SmackDown would always ultimately become the B show. It was taped. The ratings would usually be lower. And so more attention was given to Raw. If Collision is doing far less viewers than Dynamite, and they have the same roster on both shows, well, they're going to do the bigger stuff on Dynamite. Ultimately, Collision becomes the B show, like what happened with Rampage, because they were trying to push Rampage early on.
Yeah.
And then once the reality sets in that it's not going to be close to Dynamite, then you put your focus on Dynamite, and then the other one suffers even more.
And that's going to be tough. That's a lot of programming if they do Collision. I don't know did they say how many hours it was going to be? Is it going to be one
It's
or
2
two
hours?
Because between Collision and Rampage, if they're both B shows,
Well, Rampage, I think, will be a C show at that point.
I mean, isn't it already a C show?
Well, yeah.
That's a lot of time in wrestling that a lot of people aren't going to be that invested in if it's not that good. And Saturday, let me ask you this, because it was mentioned up here, and Big Time Baxter says 500,000 and a 0.15 in the demo would be a success for Collision. Do you have an idea for a Saturday what would be considered a success at that time slot? Because Saturday feels like a tough day to do a wrestling show.
Yeah, I mean, Friday nights when people bring up what Rampage is against, it's usually not your top level news shows, right? The top level news shows are in prime time. You got the B guys, and so people aren't really stacking up Saturday night programming unless it's sports. You're not seeing the big shows airing on Saturday night, so it seems like, gosh, it's just tough to say, but yeah, I can't even answer that.
Yeah, it will be tough. Now, it seems like Warner Brothers Discovery really wants CM Punk to be a part of this show, from what the reports say.
And real quick, I did want to bring up that, Rampage did air on Saturday night this past Saturday. It was up against a ton of stuff. XFL Championship game, which actually did pretty well for what it had been doing on network. UFC was on earlier in the day, but, just a bunch of sports stuff. And they did their lowest number ever this past Saturday. So 284,000 viewers. I believe it was a 0.07. So Saturday nights are tough.
Yeah. It's just a tough time. People are out doing stuff. And we talked about ratings, Big Time Baxter as well. I want to say it's been quite a long streak under 900,000 for Dynamite. It's been an 8-week straight under 900,000, which I know if you're adding new programming, I don't know what their numbers are that they're looking for from Dynamite, but there was a time when it was trying to get over 1 million. So to try to get over 900,000 is kind of a tough deal.
And for them, April to early June is their toughest stretch, just with the NBA and NHL. It's like Raw, Raw from September to mid-January is always going to be their toughest stretch. They also have competition with the NBA and NHL, and it does affect their ratings, but not to the degree that it affects Dynamite, just because the Raw ratings are so much higher.
What is Veggie Gamer with a question here? Is Collision's time slot the same as WWE's PLEs? I'd assume.
Yeah.
But did they say what time is it going to be beyond?
8 p.m. So yeah, same time.
Saturday night. Yeah. So and Tornado Anthony Y with the super chat saying CM Punk is a crybaby. He is a UFC, never has been. Now, I always try to maintain that I don't know what everything's going on, so I'm not going to call him a crybaby, but I will say that it does seem like his name comes up under a lot of drama.
Yeah, his first fight in the UFC drew really well. He got smashed, but look, Punk, he gets people to care, and that, I think that's the biggest thing. Look at this week. He's all over the news, and he hasn't stepped foot in a ring in 8 months.
Yeah, and we're still talking about him.
Yeah, he draws attention.
George is in the chat saying it's a tough spot, but if you present a product that people want to see, they will find it. It's true. But there also, I think, I was going to say, but the problem is there's DVR these days, and you can record it. That's where I don't know how they count that in ratings, but I would imagine 90% of the time I watch Collision, it'll be a recording the next day.
And if it's not a brand split and it's the same roster on two shows, it's instead of one big show, it's kind of two diluted shows. And ultimately, I don't know. I think, what you usually see happen is, like I said, one becomes the focus and one doesn't. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But Saturday nights are tough.
Yeah, it's a tough. I think for all demographics too. I mean, if you're younger, you're probably going out. If you're a parent, you probably got kids. There's Saturdays are just a tough day to get people to tune into TV. But I don't know. Maybe that'll be. Maybe they get Punk on there and they draw a huge number for sustained periods of time. We go, oh well, Punk's worth it. So he proved it. We do got a couple of comments that I wanted to get on here. Pecan asking, is TK smart enough to book Chicago with no Punk to sell out and get viewers 1 million?
Oh yeah, so that is one thing that was obviously really interesting last night when they announced the first tapings for Collision. Mostly in Canada. I think they're all in Canada, but for the premiere, which was supposed to be in Chicago, they said it's to be determined. So. Or it will be announced next week, or rather, Tony Khan said that. And so that, obviously leads me to believe that they might try not to run the United Center like was the original plan if they don't get Punk back. And maybe they're hoping that this week they can either find a new venue or figure stuff out with Punk, or figure stuff out with Punk. If it doesn't work, find a new venue. And obviously, less than a month away, they would have to scramble to find something. But they're doing Chicago that following Wednesday with Dynamite. So it would be twice, in a 4-day span. That's going to be tough if you don't have Punk there. And the Wednesday, the Chicago show that they do have already is not selling that great. So to do 2 shows, the same city, you obviously want to kick off your show with a bang. So it's a tough situation that Tony's in right now.
Yeah, it really is. And Chicago, I'd imagine, it would be a tough sell without CM Punk too, not just because of people feeling like, oh, I wanted CM Punk and I'm not getting CM Punk, but they go to Chicago so often. I feel like at this point, you've got to really give people a reason to go if you're going to do Chicago. Because it feels like they do Chicago every couple months at least.
Yeah, like I said, it would be twice in that 4-day span. So it's a lot.
Yeah, and so I don't know what the plan is there. I just wish they'd go to some different places than Chicago sometimes. Come back to LA every now and again. Speaking of LA though, Las Vegas is close to that, and we got a couple comments regarding Double or Nothing. Justin Magnifico saying, any opinion on why Double or Nothing ticket sales are down versus last year? And that got doubled up by Big Time Baxter saying Double or Nothing ticket sales are struggling too.
Well, Double or Nothing almost feels forgotten. I feel like there's nothing on the card. Look, I think, Blackpool Combat Club versus the Elite will be great. I'm sure the main event will be great action-wise, but it's not like the other participants other than MJF have sold me on this match. So the matches I don't feel the card doesn't have that pull that a lot of other AEW cards have. And I think part of that also too is that there's so much buzz around Wembley and then this Collision show now. Like that's kind of been the talk that Double or Nothing has gotten forgotten about. And I think Vegas has played out. You were just talking, Jack, with Chicago, and I think the novelty of doing it in Vegas is no longer there. I think next year they should. I can see this is in a lot of ways, their WrestleMania, their first big show that they've done on a national scale. And so I can see Tony having, nostalgic ties to wanting to keep it in Vegas, but it's clearly not working this year. They're a little over half of what, they ended up doing last year. So I think they got to move it around, find a new city next year and do that with a lot of their pay-per-views, unless they're consistently selling it out. I don't think you stay tied to Chicago if you can't sell it out, just because that's tradition.
Well, in general too, I think you should move around anyways, because I think going to a show reignites people's interest in different companies. Like I know I'm my biggest fan self whenever I've just gotten back from a show. And so if I only get to see like one show every 3 years, then that like level of interest starts to drop a little bit. But then when you go again, like, oh my God, this is incredible. I forgot how fun it is to sing Jericho's song or whatever the case is. And that goes for WWE too.
And you're missing a lot of big markets. You're not, when you automatically have 2 of your big 5, and we'll see if Forbidden Doors keep staying a hot ticket in the years to come, or if the novelty will start to wear out. If not, then that's 3 shows that travel and 2 shows that are supposed to be fixed. So picking 3 cities a year is just, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's enough. So
You were talking about how this is a tough time of year for AEW ratings wise, and D Conductor asked the question: is this why they booked the 4 Pillars match during a slow part of the year? You think they just kind of punted it here and said, look, we're not going to get the greatest ratings in the world anyways, let's just do this during this time of year?
I don't think so. Hold on one second. Go ahead and what do you think? And I just want to pull up my my pay-per-view numbers here.
I don't think that any wrestling company, particularly one of the big ones, ever thinks it's okay to just punt it or to say, hey, we may not get a big rating this time. Because I think that's just not the way it works. I think you always want to try to get big numbers and do big things, especially AEW that likes to have the big announcements and do the big surprises and the big reveals and people showing up. I don't think they're ever going to say, oh yeah, it's cool, we'll just take bad ratings this month, you know?
And last year, Double or Nothing was their number 2 show of the year. 2 years ago, it was their biggest show of the year. So, that was, I believe that was also, that was 2020. So they were on TBS, or TNT then. So yeah, I don't think that's it, because they still have shown that they can do well pay-per-view buy wise, even though April and May aren't hot for them. I think Tony really thought that this is the main event that people want to see, and he wanted to use some of his homegrown stars. I don't think it's clicked, but MJF, I think, has been on fire.
Yeah. Oh, MJF is a absolute star for them.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a matter, I think where they're in trouble with MJF is they got to find a way to make it so we're not having to see so much of him. Like I love seeing him, but you can only cut a 20-minute promo every single show for so long before people are like, okay, like we're sick of it. And that's one of the things that I think makes Roman Reigns great is we see him, he's great, and then he's gone for a little bit. Even though I know people hate the part-time champion, I think it's great.
Yeah. And to be brutally honest, I think Darby Allin has a unique charisma that I could see you moving him to a top spot if he's not having to carry the feud or do a ton of mic work. I don't think Sammy or Jungle Boy are ready for that spot yet. I think you could have put someone like a Ricky Starks. Ricky Starks, was on fire when he did that promo with MJF, and he showed that he can more than carry his side of a feud like this. So I just think it was a little miscast as far as this main event went. And you need people that could hang with MJF. If he dominates the feud, part of being a great heel is you want to see him get his ass kicked and someone beat him for that title. And I don't think you strongly want to see that with anyone in that match right now.
Yeah, it's a fun matchup. I think it'll be great. I feel like they got enough big stuff on the show that it'll still be a great show. And they've got some pretty high octane things like what do they call it? Anarchy in the Arena? They call it something else now. Or yeah, it is Anarchy in the Arena. It used to be Stadium Stampede, right? I can't remember what.
Yeah.
So I think they got stuff for the show, but I've always believed, I feel like this is just more like, let's see what these 3 guys are like when they're in the deep end and can they swim? And I think it also puts things into perspective for them of like maybe what they should work on or how they can get to that spot. Because sometimes you'll see people and they're like, oh, this guy's totally ready for the top. But then when you see what the top is really like, you're like, oh, this is a little different than what I thought. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think one thing AEW sometimes has a bad habit of is waiting too long to deliver on big matches. Like with Cody, they never did Cody versus Punk or Cody versus Omega, and then Cody's gone. They never did Punk versus Omega, and who knows if Punk will be back. And sometimes you want to have a good build, and you don't want to just throw away matches on free TV for sure, but you also don't want to sit on potential big matches. And this could have been a pay-per-view where you could have done an MJF versus an Omega or something like that you just never know what could happen. What if Omega ends up signing with WWE at the end of the year?
Yeah.
I mean, it's I off the I don't see it necessarily, but it could happen. I didn't see Cody either.
Right. Once Cody left, that opened up the, I don't want to say the forbidden door or whatever you want to call it, but like once Cody left, it's like, oh no, anyone could leave. If Cody's going to leave, then it's very possible that Kenny Omega could leave or the Bucks could leave or something like that. And I think I'm kind of surprised. I'm with you. After Cody left, I thought that'd be a bit more of a wake up call. Like, oh, we need to do stuff. We don't have these guys forever. We do only have a set amount of time before they may be gone, and we got to kind of get our stuff in before it's too late.
Right.
For some of them, because I agree. I'd love to see all of those shows or all those matchups. But Steven in the chat, good to see you again, Steven. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while. With a super chat saying, do you think a third show will be a boom for them or something they will regret? I guess that's kind of the $1 million question, Raj, but it was asked, so I'm posing it to you.
Well, I think so much depends on if Punk's involved or not. I think that changes the show drastically if he's not, unless they could pull a rabbit out of their hat. Even if they got someone like Goldberg, you can't build a show around him. You can use him as a special attraction, but he's only wrestling a handful of matches going forward, at most. So it's so dependent on Punk. And I think as far as it being a waste, as long as they're getting paid for this show, it's not. So, as a young company, that extra television revenue. And I saw Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics. He estimated that the weekly TV costs, $500,000 to produce. So, you got to assume then that Turner is pitching in at least $26 million to at least cover the cost, and anything on top of that is profit. Well, not on top. Yeah. Anything on top of that would be profit, assuming that $500,000 is not just production, but also flying in talent and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think it's a bust, but I don't think it's if they don't have Punk, I could see it not doing as well. I don't want to be doom and gloom on it before it's, when they just announced it, but I think they really do need Punk for it.
Yeah, and I'll say, I know when we do these shows, sometimes it probably sounds like I put a lot of the weight of things on Punk with what's going on. I just do that because of the way the reports are, and that's just kind of all I have to go off of. I always say I don't have any idea what's really going on with that. I just have the reports to go off of. But that said, CM Punk can sell a show better than just about anybody I can remember. You put him on that show and you give him a microphone, he will give people every reason in the world to tune in. I think of all the wrestlers I can think of right now, he's probably the very best that is available that could talk you into watching a show. I think across the board too. I think Roman's the biggest star in pro wrestling, but as far as talking me into watching a show, maybe Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman's pretty darn good at that stuff too. But you know what I mean? Like not just cut a good promo, but maybe like, oh, I've got to see this guy and I've got to buy in. Punk just has a crazy ability to get people to buy into him. And I think that's why we talk about him even when he hasn't been on TV in 8 months or 9 months or whatever it is.
Yeah, there are just people that have it and that it factor that makes you watch. Punk's there, Lesnar, Roman, Cody, I think has it.
Yeah.
There are just certain guys that just have that and gals that have that aura. Sasha, Mercedes. That just gets you interested. So and he's one of them. And it's hard. You can't teach it. It's hard you either have it or you don't.
Well, we talk about this, and Lee Jones with a potential person. Would Drew McIntyre be able to sell you on a Saturday night AEW show?
Well, his contract's not. He wouldn't be available till later this year anyway, and I just don't see it. I could see him being, a top guy, kind of like a Danielson, but carrying a show. I could be wrong. He has all the tools, but I don't think he has the same kind of that intangible it that Punk has. And again, that's nothing against him. Just hardly anyone does.
Yeah. And again, there's also a difference between this person's super entertaining and this person makes me feel like I need to watch this show. It's a different kind of thing as well. That CM Punk, like I said, probably in my opinion, one of the best to do it in a very long time. I won't say ever or
No,
anything like that. But as far as like, you have to see what he's going to do. He's just one of those guys.
He reminds me of Ultimate Warrior back in the day, in the sense that when he's gone, it's like people talk more about him. Like he generates that much more interest. And then when he's back, it's hot for a while, but then it kind of disintegrates a bit. But like Warrior, when every time he would leave and there was an absence, everyone's like, "Oh, what's going on? When's Warrior coming back? What's going on with Warrior?" Back in the day, and he'd come back and it would be hot for a bit, for a minute, and then it'd settle back down.
Yeah, that is true. That's funny. Bray Wyatt has a bit of that too.
Yeah. Yep.
Whenever he's off TV, people can't stop talking about him. But we also got Christopher Strikeleather asking, how will Collision being on Saturdays affect other AEW shows they usually run on Saturdays? For example, Battle of the Belts. I would assume nothing. I feel like Battle of the Belts is kind of a blip on the radar. What say you, though?
Yeah, the last couple of Battle of the Belts aired on Friday after Rampage. And it was basically a 2-hour Rampage. It was at the same arena. They just changed the signage. So Battle of the Belts is just to fulfill the contract at this point.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have any problem moving that anytime.
Wrestling Enthusiast with a super chat. We park our car in the same garage, Wrestling Enthusiast. AEW needs more shows on the West Coast. Easy money. I know there's traveling and stuff that goes into it, but I don't understand why wrestling shows don't do more West Coast. It feels like every time they're on the West Coast, they sell out, great crowds, people are pumped, and then they don't come back for another year. I've never understood it, but
they did well in LA, their first time there. They did really well, but they didn't do well in San Francisco for the Revolution pay-per-view. As far as, up until recently, all the AEW pay-per-views would sell out well in advance, and San Francisco wasn't close. They didn't do that well for the other shows that were there that week. So, but I do think LA is one market that, they should hit more often for sure.
I agree. I'd love to go see their shows. Mark Smith with a super chat asks, Raj, where is Andrade? I actually miss him on TV. And we also got a follow-up from Christopher Strikeleather, who says, do we know if Andrade is getting time added to his contract since he has been out for a while or not?
Yeah, he had surgery. He was injured. He had surgery. He's recovering from that. But they're advertising him for Collision. So, they have plans to bring him back soon.
Yeah. So that should be good. Lots of stuff there. Cleveland Roxanne Meltzer said he just started doing push-ups, so sounds like he won't be back until maybe summer.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't remember what exactly his injury was, but with injuries, you just got to give him
tricep,
time.
or it was either pec or tricep, a tear.
Either way, it sounds painful.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, lots of stuff there. It's interesting as we talk about AEW being back in Vegas again for Double or Nothing, or going back to Chicago. Nick Khan with WWE, he actually had a very different kind of conversation. According to WrestleNomics, Brandon Thurston, Khan said that WWE is planning to do a live event in India in September. This continues WWE's trend of events abroad, as the company already runs premium live events in Saudi Arabia and Wales, while the upcoming Money in the Bank will take place in London's O2 Arena. Raj, WWE, they always talk about being the worldwide leader, but they're going to be in a different country like every month the rest of this year.
It's awesome. And real quick, the Andrade thing, it was a torn pec. I think it's great. I think it gives the show a different feel. You look at the Clash at the Castle, you look at Backlash in Puerto Rico, going outside of the continental US, I think is great. I'd like to see them do something in Hawaii. I'd like to see them do shows different parts of Europe, Mexico. It just gives a different flavor, a different feel. You get a different vibe, and it makes it different. But for far too long, WWE with their B shows, it was a B show. There's nothing unique about it. It all depended on what the main event was. And then now you're getting shows like Backlash, where, yeah, you did have Cody versus Brock. And you did have, Bad Bunny wrestling. But on top of that, the intrigue of them returning to Puerto Rico was a draw in itself. So I'd like to see. I hope the India thing that turns into more than a live event, and they do a pay-per-view. Obviously, there's PLE. Sorry, but
Yeah.
obviously there's big costs with those. With production and everything. But if they could get the Indian government or sponsorships, that where it makes it worth it, I'd love to see it.
I mean, there's so much obvious reasons why that would be good. I mean, just the population in general. Like, I mean,
Hmm.
there's a lot of people to sell T-shirts to, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, but at the same time, I'm a big believer in, and I've said this before, you should reward fans. You've got fans all over the world. Like, let them see your shows, go to them, let them be a part of it. Veggie Gamer with a comment here that I think is just fantastic says, Clash of the Castle was my first ever live wrestling event and made me appreciate it on a whole new level. It's so good. Yeah, going to shows changes like if you've never been to a wrestling show and you go to a live one, there's so much fun. Like it's just a different world. So I hope they go to India, and I hope they go to a lot of places, and I hope they go back to India. I think that would be incredible for them. But
Hmm.
like I said, that's why when I see Double or Nothing in Vegas again, or like, hey, we're announcing 2 more shows in Chicago, I'm like, man,
Yeah.
there's so many fans out there. Like, let them go to
Right.
shows too.
Yeah, and I think again, going to India, I think you do a live event in India, you'll get some press and everything because they haven't been there in a while. But you do a PLE there, all of a sudden it's a different animal, and then you're getting like all the press and all the media is really paying attention, and then it just becomes a different thing, and it's huge country. There are some people, depending on whose number you use, who have said that it's taken over China as the most populated country in the world.
Mm-hmm. And it's, yeah, I think that'll be awesome for them, and I'm super excited for them to be able to do that. And so,
I I remember going to India. This was in 2008, I think. Yeah,
mhm,
2008, and the Great Khali happened to be going at the same time, and it was a gigantic deal out there. It was all the news. The top actor Shah Rukh Khan, Sachin Tendulkar, they all wanted to meet him, and they were, it was just he was just on the news nonstop. I'd never seen anything like it. I can't even come up with a comparison to what the U.S. equivalent would be for something like that. But it was just insane. And
yeah,
I think they could get that kind of press again. And I'm sure they could get Kali to, do a cameo at the show as well.
and yeah, I'm sure it would, and I'm sure the reaction would be incredible. I mean, you look at, I feel like you just look at, like Cardiff was like okay, this was like it was really cool. Everyone was super into it. If like this was a great idea, but I think to me, what sealed the deal was Backlash. Right? Okay, now we're in a different country, and that crowd made it feel like it was a WrestleMania event. I don't
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to see that show, but if they put like a Raw crowd sound
Hmm.
over it and how different the perception would have been of how it was. But you can also imagine them getting the big stars of those different countries, like a Bad Bunny or wherever they go, and helping to build the relationships there. It's just yeah, I think they should be going to new countries as often as possible, and like I said, just new markets. And I'm just a big fan of fans getting to be a part of it. I think
Yeah.
it's fun.
And the way they were able to, peak Sami Zayn in Montreal and Drew McIntyre in Cardiff. It was brilliantly done. Hopefully they do more of that.
And Dylan Matthews, the GIF King, saying, and I can't pronounce the name. Raj, how do you say
Sachin
it?
Tendulkar.
If
Yeah. It's a big
Sachin
cricket player.
Tendulkar wants to meet you in India, that's a big deal.
It
Yeah. So,
is.
um, plus, I think when you see these other countries getting all these great shows and all this stuff happening, then even if you are one of those places that gets lots of shows, when they come to you, you're a little bit jealous, and so you want to show out a little bit more. I know. Whenever I'm in the crowd, I'm like, no, we're going to be the best crowd they've ever had. Let's make some
Yeah.
noise.
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
Big Time Baxter added, Nick Khan also said they are aware moving a show to streaming will cause a decline in viewers, but they are also looking for the best deal loss.
Yeah, I mean, look, Thursday Night Football is not doing near the number of viewers it did, now that they're on Amazon, that it did on Fox, but they're killing it in that demo still on streaming, and it's making more money than ever. So ultimately, money talks. And everything's going to streaming ultimately. And it's not like one of those things where if cable drops from 70 million subscribers or whatever they're at to 0, then it's dead. If they drop to like 30, then all of a sudden it's not, financially feasible, and people just start dropping, even having that as an option. So, streaming is the way to go, but you also see a lot of these services right now seem to be peaking a little bit.
Yeah, and it's I think the jump will eventually happen for them, but you want to make sure you jump at the right time. Like it all comes down to money, like you said. So if you're getting paid more now with cable, but then you'll get paid more in 3 years streaming, why not wait until 3 years from now and then cash in now and cash in then, as opposed to making the switch just because. And I'm sure they've done their research on all that stuff, so they probably know better than I do on when that's going to be. But I'm sure it'll happen eventually, but it'll be on their time when it makes sense for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like to see that. I'm sure they'll make that jump at some point too. In Make Believe, saying Raj says, I don't know if it's the lighting or the camera angle, but you're looking younger.
Hey.
This would have been a perfect spot for an ad. God, I wish we had something to transition to here.
I know, got nothing.
But we're not putting over anybody unless they're paying us.
Right? Yeah.
I don't want to know about your skincare routine. I don't want to know about your hair care. We're not saying anything until you pay us the big bucks. Sponsors.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no secrets unless you pay.
Speaking of streaming, Darla asked earlier, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. I don't get why AEW doesn't put more of their pay-per-views on DVD. There's really no way to watch their past pay-per-views without streaming or DVDs. My question to you is there still a market for DVDs, or is that ship sailed completely?
Yeah, I think that ship has just sailed. It's probably not worth what they'd get out of it to do DVDs at this point. I can't remember the last time I've used a DVD.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to play one if I had one, to be honest.
Yeah.
I guess maybe on my Xbox I could probably.
Yeah, it's PS5, I guess you can do it.
Plug it into there, but I didn't know if it was one of those things where I'm like, oh yeah, no one does that anymore. And like, well, actually,
Right.
It's like no one listens to the radio anymore. Well, actually, 70 million people or whatever the number is.
Right. They are dropping AM radio from a lot of cars now.
Yeah, I heard about that too.
So the times, they are becoming quite different.
Yes, they are. Yeah, and so as we wrap up here, I have one thing I kind of want to run by you real quick. And WWE released this list of the greatest debuts of all time. And so everyone in the chat, I want you to give me your 1, 2, or 3, whatever, greatest debuts of all time. Now, obviously, this is WWE debuts. They listed, actually, real quick, what do you think is the number 1 debut of all time, just off the top of your head?
Gosh, as a kid, I'd say Undertaker.
Interesting. That'd be a good. I think a lot of people would say that.
Yeah, Attitude Era-ish, I'd say Chris Jericho.
Yeah, we got Jericho. Baby Ice saying Jericho. Veggie Gamer saying Jericho. Tutgraph saying Jericho. Ethan Cruz says Edge debuted like 500 times. Enzo and Big Cass. That's an interesting one. John Cena. I'm going to read through the top 10 from what they have on this list.
Yeah.
And again, this is from WWE. Dylan's saying AJ Styles or Sting.
AJ was great. Sting was great.
Number 1, The Shield.
Nah.
Number 2.
It was good.
It was good. Yeah, it was a good one. Number 1, I don't know. But number 2, Kane. Okay, that was a pretty good one. I mean, it was interesting. I feel like it's worth a conversation. I don't know if I'd put it at 2, but number 3, Goldberg. Number 4, Ronda Rousey.
The problem with Goldberg is they did the video package already, so you knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And then he came in like a jacket and shirt, and it just wasn't the Goldberg from WCW, that first appearance.
Yeah, I agree. It was cool. Again, all these are cool. They're just not. I don't know if I'd say
no
they're
bad
top
ones.
5.
Yeah.
So Shield, Kane, Goldberg, Rousey, then Brock Lesnar as the top 5.
Brock, it was good, but no one knew who he was. It wasn't like a, oh my God, kind of, but the crowd going crazy type of deal. So
I think it's interesting. All 5 of these, no one has mentioned, by the way. We also got Big Show in the chat. We got, again, Jericho.
I think Jericho overall.
But then, because what's crazy is 6, it goes to AJ Styles, which is cool. But then The Rock, Kevin Owens, 9 is John Cena, and Jericho is at 10.
I would put The Rock on the bottom of that top 10 just because when he came, as far as a debut, obviously he panned out okay. But,
right. As a debut, I don't know if I don't think his debut was great at all, to be honest.
No,
I mean,
he had the hair and the weird, the music didn't really, it was just total 80s baby face. And, it wasn't like a huge crowd reaction. It was fine, but not near the level of Jericho.
I mean, I feel like half of The Rock's debut today is, can you believe this is how The Rock debuted? Like,
right.
It's not because it was great. It's like, this was still how The Rock debuted.
Right.
But yeah, Jericho, Booker T, Undertaker at 12, Sting at 13.
Undertaker at 12. Wow.
It's very weird to me because I always know that with these lists, I always say it's WWE. WWE is a promotional company, so they're not going to put Jericho at number 1. I get it.
But Taker.
Taker should have been number 1. Like, that makes sense.
Or up there. Yeah.
Or even, I get the Shield because Roman Reigns was in the Shield, Seth Rollins was in the Shield, and if you're promoting from within, you know what I mean? Like, I get like, okay, we want to make it sound like our current guys are the biggest deals going, but then I don't get Kane at 2. Put Undertaker at 2.
I mean, the Undertaker's another one. The crowd, it's not like the crowd was going crazy, but it was the talk of the, again, we didn't have the internet back then, but we had a Survivor Series party that night. And that was the talk of the show that night, not Hogan and Warrior winning the wild card match at the end.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows look at the size of that ham hock, we all know that moment. So very, very interesting list here. I just thought I always feel like lists are really just to talk about. I don't take them seriously. And again, I know this is like a promotional thing, but interesting that I thought it was an interesting list. I thought it was I'd love to know the way they came up with it.
Ronda got the most mainstream attention for sure.
Yeah, so I'll give that one a pass because that got a lot of attention.
Cody. Yeah, Cody. Well, I guess that's not a debut though. That's like a re-debut. Yeah.
Yeah. Veggie Gamer, great question. What about Drew Carey?
Yeah. that was a great one. Andy Richter.
Santino, by the way, was actually a good one. I saw Santino. It says Santina here, but Santino actually won a title in his first match.
Yeah. You don't see that often.
So Jericho responded to this, by the way, just saying, "Hold my beer." But in any case, lists are always
China,
fun.
That's a good one.
China's another good one. Yeah, from Tornado. Again, I don't take these personally. Lists I don't take personally, just like the PWI whatevers or anything like that. I always just take it as it is what it is. But and baby, I just wanted to clarify Santina, not Santino. But yeah, this was an interesting one. I'm kind of surprised at the order, but again, I'm sure they had I would love to know their criteria for why they put it together this way. But I think that does it for us, Raj. We've done our hour. Before we go, let the world know what you're working on, where they can find you, and everyone in the chat, let us know any of your closing thoughts as we head out of here.
Yeah, just check me out here every Thursday and follow me on Twitter at Raj Giri.
And you can follow me at Real Jack Farmer across all social media. Of course, you can find me on Wrestling Inc. here every Monday and Thursday, and at Double or Nothing, where I'll be rubbing shoulders with all the big wigs. I'm going to see if I can get a good old Tony Khan hug before I head out of there. And also, like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm going to be doing commentary for Santino Brothers tonight, 8:30 Pacific time. You can check it out for free on YouTube. Should be a fun show. Check it out. Thanks to everyone who's in the chat here, who stuck along with us. Big Time Baxter, Veggie Gamer, Baby Ice, Tut Graph, Tornado Anthony Wide, Just Dante, and everyone, Jeffrey Sullivan, Cleveland Rocks, a lot of folks here, Lee Jones as well. And of course, Dylan Matthews. Appreciate you guys. Remember, like, comment, share, subscribe, and let us know who your top couple of debuts were in the comments section on YouTube while you're here. And let us know, who you thought got snubbed maybe on the list and who you think should have been higher. Raj, I think that does it for us. We're going to sign off now. Appreciate all you guys, and we'll see you next time. Make sure to tune into Wrestling Inc. for the SmackDown and Rampage after show tomorrow, and follow Wrestling Inc. for all your wrestling news.